Hello, may peace and blessings be upon you. Welcome to the My Voice Show, where we bring in the people from our community to talk about the things that are important to us, to answer that questions that we, the youth, have. Today, our guest is Darshini Krishnamurthy. Thank you, Darshini, for joining us today. The first time that we met was at My Voice's event, the Art Auction for Burma, and listening to you speak over there just made me feel like I wanted to have another conversation with you. And we're here to speak about culture versus religion. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on the show, Aisha. Assalamu alaikum to you.
Walaikum salam.
It's been really great knowing you and the community and the volunteers from My Voice Canada. I feel the commitment that your organization has towards the betterment of the Muslim youth in our community, and the fact that we've all gathered here in a Western country called Canada. I think there's so much that we can learn from each other.
Yeah.
And I've learned so much from My Voice Canada since I got to know you and the organization. So I wish that we could continue working together on other projects as well in the
Thank
future.
you, and we will. So, as Muslim youth in Canada, surrounded by so many cultures and the culture in our own home, things can get confusing. And what happens when the cultures around us seems to clash with our religion? Ultra confusion. Darshini, is this confusion something that you felt? Do you feel like it's relevant to your experience? So we can just start off with where you come from, where you were raised, what your religion was growing up, and your cultures around you.
Sure, absolutely. I think I've faced conflicts throughout my adult life, even growing up. So my background, I'm South Indian, so I grew up in Hindu family. My parents are not too orthodox, but still we were instilled certain values growing up.
So, like, what does it mean to be like Orthodox Hindu versus not Orthodox?
Orthodox Hindus, they're a bit more strict.
Okay.
They tend to hold on to their values a bit stronger than someone who might want to question and see if it's a way for me to balance between my Western values versus traditional values that has been passed down. So, so the conflicts that I usually have encountered with my parents was that they have inherited a set of values from their parents, who've inherited from their parents, but they didn't adapt to the situation around them. So where I grew up in Singapore, we are very multicultural. So we don't have a national religion or anything like that. We're quite secular, but we respect each other's cultures and religion a lot. So for instance, back home we get days off for Eid. Everyone gets days off for Eid. Everyone celebrates. Celebrants get more time, I guess, because they have to do visits and spend time with family and friends. But we respect each other's like religion, for instance, and values as well in that sense.
Yeah. So do you feel like if I asked you if there's a specific culture that you identify with, do you feel like your experiences of growing up surrounded by so many different ones and sort of being even a part of those different ones, because you guys had days off for holidays that maybe you weren't even celebrating, or maybe you did.
Yeah.
Do you feel like there wouldn't be one particular answer you could give me about a culture that you identify with? Like, what would you say if I said, like, Darshini, what culture do you identify with? Because maybe I would say, okay, Pakistani Canadian. I feel like that's the answer I'd give someone.
Yeah.
Like, what would you say?
I can't identify particularly with culture. I had this strong cultural. It's one stronger than the other, but really I think it's a bit of a mix of different cultures. So if you want me to pinpoint a particular culture, I would say perhaps just South Indian.
South Indian.
Yeah. Tamil. I don't even have a strong Singaporean identity in a sense, because I've lived away from home for so long, and I've had to adapt to wherever I've had to live just so that I can progress and strive.
Yeah. And so where did you go after Singapore?
I went to the UK.
The UK.
Yeah, and I lived in Dubai for a bit. So as you can see, like, I can't possibly sort of import my cultural values to Dubai, for instance, because I had to respect. Although they are cosmopolitan country, there are lots of foreigners, and they try and accommodate, different foreign traditions and values. We still have to respect their values and cultures and stuff like that. So it's been quite a journey. So, and then you realize how important it is for you to have your own identity and values while you live in different environment.
Yeah, because that can get confusing.
Correct. Yeah.
Are there some confusions that you felt like something, maybe even like when you were in Dubai and sort of trying to accommodate to the sort of lifestyle that they had? Did you face any sort of like struggle or conflict?
No.
No.
I think it's because I was coming from Asia.
Wow.
So we have been told to be respectful of everyone's culture. If you're coming from, I would say semi-conservative background, but I think it's a good value to have to be in order to respect and understand cultures. Where people come from, just so that there's no misinterpretation or miscommunication, because a lot of the times we tend to have preconceived notions about a person's character or what they believe in, just because we say, oh, Pakistani Canadian, she must have this and this ideology and she's aligned this and this way. So you have a preconceived notion without giving a person a chance to express their ideas, for instess. So if when you live in different parts of the world, you tend to develop that kind of skill, I would say.
Yeah, the skill
sort of, to be able to adapt
and even like not simply adapt, but or to sort of
understand
to understand, to be a part of it, to have an appreciation for it.
Exactly. Appreciation, that's the word. Thank you.
So I guess growing up over here, I felt a conflict when I felt like my culture and my religion would clash, and that's sort of I feel like that's probably something that a lot of the youth can relate to. I can give you an example of something that is from my life, and then maybe you can relate to some sort of conflict that maybe you faced growing up, a clash that you might have felt in because there isn't really like a specific culture that maybe you identify with, but maybe something from like the things that you saw around you and how that sort of clashed with the moral internal belief that you had. So one of the examples growing up for me was, and it's still, I think, something for me, is education in our home, the values around education in my home, and something else that ties with it is the values around marriage in my home. So it's like those two big things where I felt a clash between what I felt from my culture and what I felt from my religion. So I felt like in my where I come from, in my culture, I don't know if I can say a specific place where it comes from, but it seems to be like in the environment in my home, in the community that I'm around, there seems to be this larger focus on the education of a male versus female. I think last year I was not so excited about studying for my exams, and I also had a lot of questions about the way that the university system was working, and so I just sat down with my brother one day and I was being kind of melodramatic, and I'm like, you know what, I think I'm going to leave school. And my mom's like, Aisha, either you study or I'm going to get you married. And I was just like, well, that's so interesting, where for a woman to kind of take on the role of being a wife and becoming a mother, for some reason for her it doesn't seem that important to have an education, whereas for the guys in our culture, they would know there's a big pressure on them to get their degree done, to get some sort of designation before they can even be an eligible bachelor. And if they don't have their degree, if they don't have their designation, it can get really difficult for them. So I always found that really confusing, because I felt this gap between the way that education, the importance of education was perceived when it came to a male versus female. And it's different for every Pakistani. Maybe it's just where, like, the culture in my home.
Yeah.
And so when I look at my religion, it says that education is important for male and female. The first verse that was revealed to the Prophet was about the Quran. It said read, in the name of your Lord, read.
Right.
And there's also a hadith that says that the ink of a scholar is more sacred than the blood of a martyr. So I remember, like, that was something that I really had to, like, because when you're little, you equate everything. I think I equated everything with my religion and God, because that was what was most prevalent to me in my home.
Yeah.
And so if there was something that I felt like didn't make sense, I just got upset with my religion. I said, like, why is this the case? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And then when you grow up and you begin to realize that you need to study the religion on your own, you're like, oh, well, that didn't even come from my religion. That was coming from somewhere else.
Right.
So that's something that I had to learn. And it creates conflict, because sometimes you can turn away from your religion. That's an example of mine. And do you have an example, some sort of conflict that maybe you felt between the culture around you and an internal moral that you had?
Yeah, absolutely. So very much like what you had mentioned, I had to go away and learn about my religion a bit more, instead of just inheriting everything my parents had told me, just like passed down. They've been doing that for generations, and it worked for them. But I think our generation, we're looking for more answers. Like we're a bit more attuned to the changes in the society. We are looking for more depth in understanding. So I think if anyone is caught in a conflict between what's been taught in their home versus what's been taught at school, for instance, or at work, I think gaining some wisdom should be the first step. So you have to understand a bit more about your religion and what it says. So you have to go away and do some self-reflection.
Absolutely.
Get more understanding about what your book, the Quran or your holy book says, and then you can ask yourself, who am I and how do I identify myself with what's been taught in your holy book? Because a lot of times we just take for granted what's been taught to us.
Exactly.
It's just because we trust our parents.
Yes.
We all completely do, and it's really important.
Yeah.
But they're also human beings.
Exactly.
And they're also learning every day. Like, for instance, my parents, I've had so many conversations with my mum about religion. I've asked her so many questions. Believe it or not, we've come to a point where I'm telling her things instead of her teaching me things. And I'm like, why didn't you tell me this before? And she's like, I don't know. And my granddad, he was a religious man. He's not with us anymore, but so I'm a bit surprised that that he might a lot of things that my parents didn't know, that I had to go away and do my own research, my own analysis, my own understanding from my own perspective, because it's a personal relationship that you have. It's about forming your individuality. It's so important for you to know who you are, so that if ever you are in conflict or you don't know what to do in an instance, you wouldn't be so lost, you wouldn't be confused. It'd be easier for you to come back on track. So that's the thing.
I think as we grow, we do see that we can sort of teach our parents as well, and they teach us, and we grow together like that. It's really, I think it's an interesting dynamic as you grow older to be able to also be like a friend with your parents.
I think that's very important.
You teach each other. So we'll continue after our break. We're just going to take a short break. We'll be back. Welcome back to the My Voice show. I'm your host Aisha, and our guest today is Darshini. Before the break, we were speaking about culture versus religion. And Darshini, we're now going to answer questions from our Just Ask page on our website at myvoicecanada.com. So leave a question on our website and we will answer it on the show. We have two questions. Our first one is, how can I maintain my Muslim identity at school? And you can give the youth advice.
Okay, so in my opinion, I don't think it's possible for you to remove, separate your identity from your environment. I think it's more of you reinforcing yourself when you are in an environment, especially in school or at work. So it's important for you to select whom you plan to surround yourself with, because daily interactions, you spend a lot of time in school. You spend more time in school than you do at home. So the people you tend to interact in school is really crucial, because they should reinforce the values that you hold dear to you, be it whether it comes from your home or any other places. So the company you keep is very important in school.
Yeah. And we spoke to a scholar to sort of help us answer this question, and something that he mentioned was a verse from the Quran that spoke about surrounding ourselves with trustworthy and honest people, not only Muslims, in general, trustworthy and honest people. So choose your company based on their character. I think that's something that will definitely help you maintain your own identity.
Absolutely, yeah. So your daily conversations, for instance, and how the people around you choose to motivate you to progress. Because ultimately, when you're in school with goals. So whether you are a Jewish or you're a Muslim, you have to be able to have like an end goal to achieve by the time you finish school. So I think your religious identity is one, but also are your friends helping you, or your schoolmates helping you to achieve your academic goals? So I think that's really important as well. Yeah.
And our second question is, to what extent do we have to obey our parents if it clashes with our morals and our values?
I would never encourage anyone to disobey their parents. I think, like we had spoken about earlier, in my personal stories about conflicts that I've had with my parents growing up, it's important to get their consensus, because your parents always have expectations for you, and they are there for you every step of the way while you're growing up. So they expect a certain, individual at the end of 25 years of, nurturing their child. But sometimes along the way, we tend to get exposed to different ideas, ideologies. It's a bit different from our parents. So disobedience may not be the best approach. I think trying to get them to understand who you have become and why you've become like that, is the environment or circumstances that might have shaped your ideology, which is different from what they have instilled in you. I think parents, they love us as much, more than anything in the world. So I think most times they are very willing and forthcoming in wanting to understand their children. Because they want to know who you've become, if it's not what I expected you to become, right? So at that point, I think a dialogue or some sort of conversation is really important. I think a constant dialogue with a parent is crucial.
So rather than sort of doing something behind their back or not including them in your daily activities, sit down with them, have a conversation with them, be honest, and tell them what it is that you want and why you want it.
Absolutely, they are your best friends. I mean, these are the first relationship you've had when you came to this world, are your mom and your dad. So if you can't speak to them about your conflicts in life, your identity, we all go through existential crisis, throughout, especially coming so far from where our grandparents are from, and the cultures is so different. You have constant learning is happening, and they are also learning, like we had spoken about earlier. So they may not express the fact that they are willing to learn a bit more overtly, because they are a bit older and they have a set of a set of values they want to retain. But I think they are open to learn what is different from the changes that their child is going through. Consider the fact that they were born in Canada, they are growing up in a different environment. So if
we're willing to share with them and they're willing to learn, then
I think that they will appreciate the fact that you are coming to them and telling mom and dad, I want to do something that I think you may not approve. Or I know you're not going to approve. I'm going to, I want to share this with you because, perhaps your friend had suggested that we go somewhere. Your parents may not like you hanging around in a certain area or doing something that is completely out of line, but
So before the break, we talked a little bit about the conflict that we can feel when a religion or our internal beliefs clash with the cultures around us.
Yeah.
But what can we say about religion and culture coming together to provide a better identity, a better understanding of who we are? You know, do you believe that instead of being conflicted by them, we can use it to understand ourselves better?
Yeah, absolutely. Because culture itself is a social construct, so it involves different elements, and religion is one of it. I think religion is a key piece to your culture, but it involves culture involves so many things. So, in order for you, if you want to be able to marry both and better your life and perhaps even your identity, I think that's probably a good approach, a good way to do so. And a starting point would be to ask, again, self-reflection, like how can I possibly be a good Christian in Canada? So that's like culture versus religion, right? Or a good Muslim in Canada. So how would you come into consensus and find some kind of synchronicity between the both? Is something that you have to, it has to happen on an individual level. I don't think it can happen in a group level or even with your parents. It has to happen at a space where you ask yourself questions and you do some self-reflection and lots of education, I think.
And then I have a question, because I think it's something that I've had to ask myself in the past, and it's what if someone can't seem to find harmony between the religion that they have and the culture around them? Like, for some reason they feel like it doesn't work together. Do you feel like they should leave one for the other? What should be valued more?
I would never encourage anyone to leave one for the other. I think they should be in perfect harmony at any given point. But speaking to people would really help. Having a mentor would really help.
Yes.
If you're ever at a point where you feel like you're in constant conflict, some people fall really deep into the conflict and cannot come out of it, and then that's when things start spiraling downwards. So before we hit that point, I think it's important to reach out to community leaders, spiritual leaders, parents, friends who might have been on that path, or you might look up to because they just seemed as if you feel like they could go to them, like approach them for advice, for instance. And you need to have someone like that in your life at any point, because we constantly ask questions. Sometimes we leave without getting the answer, and I don't think that's kind of good, because it sort of builds up and it becomes like a really confused state. People go through like lots of confusion and they stay in that state for a long time, which could potentially be a disaster, which we want to prevent, especially for youth, because it's important that they are in an environment which encourages them to become a better human being and a citizen generally. So,
do you feel like you had a mentor, or you have a mentor, someone who helps you in those times when you are, a little shaken or a little doubtful?
Yeah, I've been lucky enough to have had people sort of nudge me through whenever I've been in, a state of conflict, or I needed some clarity on certain things. So I've spent a lot of my life trying to clear things up, especially to do with my culture and my religion, trying to bring both into harmony. It's been quite a journey, but it's possible. I don't think we should ever be in a state where we feel lost and confused. There's always people out there who've been in your shoes before, so it's important that you reach out and talk about it. Just talk.
And mentors really helped me. I think that's the way that I was able to clear some of my doubts. Well, thank you so much, Darshini. And before we leave, we're going to play a game to shake things up.
Sounds good.
Just think quick on your feet. I'm going to throw 15 words at you, and when each word comes, just say the first thing that pops into your head, okay?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Okay.
Okay, ready? Yellow.
Sunflower.
Bite.
Cake.
Cute. Quick.
Pig.
What?
What? I was going to say little pig. I don't know.
Little
I forgot
pig?
it.
From
The cartoon
cute?
character.
Okay.
Oh,
Oh,
Winnie the
that's
Pooh.
fun.
Winnie the Pooh.
Okay,
Sorry,
Winnie the Pooh.
Pooh.
Nose.
Nose ring.
Nose ring. Groovy.
Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson. Pickle.
Achar.
Achar. I love achar. I eat it with like every meal.
Or
Shiny.
cucumber, whatever.
Shiny.
Shiny.
Yeah.
Diamond.
Diamonds. Tail.
Kangaroo.
Kangaroo.
Tail as in cat tail, right?
Yeah, tail as in tail. Sip. Fast.
Sorry?
Fast. I'm
Coke.
rushing you.
Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola. Ancient.
History.
History. Blush.
Red.
Red. Mitten.
Winter.
Winter. Ashamed.
Be proud.
Be proud. And temporary.
Never too long.
Never too long. All right. Well,
Too many words for the last word.
Too many words. Well, I think you did a wonderful job.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you
tried.
so much for being here today. I learned so much from you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on the show, Aisha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us. If you want more conversations like this, please subscribe. You can hear about these issues in our magazines. Go to myvoicecanada.com, subscribe. If you'd like to write to us because you want to volunteer or maybe start a chapter in your own city, do write to us and we will answer your questions. We want to get involved. We want to work with you. Thank you so much. See ya and join us next time.